Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Influencers Project. I'm your host, Craig Reynolds. With me today is someone I met quite a long time ago when I first started my television career. I believe he was working on the camera side of things, but since then, he's become a world-renowned producer, director, and a new boxer as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Rory Karpf. Rory, how are you today?
Hey, what's up, Craig? It's good to see you. Thanks for having me.
It is great to see you, man. I've seen you on social media a bunch, mainly I think on LinkedIn, but it's great to finally catch back up with you again. How's everything been?
Good. I'm here in LA, like I told you. I had a shoot this week, and today I'm heading to Kansas City. So I'm just traveling back on the road. For a while we weren't traveling with COVID, so it's good to be back.
Nice. So let's get started. When I first met you, we were working at Speed TV, and I think you were running cameras then. I'm not sure, you probably were producing as well. How did you get into the television world, and where did you grow up as well?
Well, I actually was working for NASCAR Images, which was the production company of NASCAR.
That's right. Yes.
And I was a producer, and I got hired by this guy, Jim Jordan, who I just got off the phone with. He's one of my very close friends and a mentor of mine. He was the president of production at NFL Films. So NFL Films is where I first got my start. Jim left the NFL to kind of create an NFL Films for NASCAR, and he brought me with him. And when I started my career at NFL Films, I wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire. So I got the job, and I wasn't very disciplined. I wasn't doing great. And Jim became my boss after I'd been there almost a year. And he told me that the previous boss ranked everyone in the producers department basically by, I don't know if by skill, but also by competence and everything. And out of 82 people in the department, I was ranked 82, dead last. Wow. Yeah. So he told me that and kind of said, like, look, I'm starting you off fresh, clean slate. I see something in you. And I think what he did see in me was I was ambitious. I just didn't necessarily know like how to go about things the right way. But because he believed in me and also gave me opportunities to prove myself, I started doing a lot better there, and then kind of, just became a more competent producer.
What an incredible mentor and influencer to have in Jim Jordan. I mean, that's a big step for sure.
Yeah, no, he was a really good friend, and I also. Yeah, I've been, you need people that you can't do it by yourself. And, I in high school, we had a TV production station, and the teacher of that was this guy, Mr. McWilliams. He ran the studio. And in high school, I got into like a lot of trouble. I had like behavior problems. My grades were always good, but I just was always just getting in trouble for stupid things. And, again, he saw something in me and was just like a kind of a friend to me as a teacher. And he would tell me, other teachers would be like, why do you mess with that kid? He's going nowhere. He's a loser. Don't waste your time with him. And this shoot that we're doing in Kansas City, Mr. McWilliams is coming on the shoot as my production assistant, and his son works for me, does audio. So it finally paid off, his faith in me. What was 25 to 30 years ago.
I had a conversation with Frank Wilson at Speed one time, and he said, sometimes you just need someone that believes in you. And it sounds like you keep running into those people that see that gem that you are.
Well, two. I had two. I mean, right. I had hundreds and hundreds of people that didn't. So, but yeah, they're still my friends, which says something.
I think in life, we have a lot of that, a lot of the hundreds and hundreds that don't believe in us, that don't care to help bring you along. But the ones that do, those are the ones that count. And those are the ones we always keep in our pockets, and the ones that we are so appreciative
to be, it's easy sometimes to just see what's not working. versus the potential for what could work. I
Mm-hmm.
remember when you were at Speed TV, the way I first came across you is you were hosting like a really, at the time for Speed, it was like a really big show. I don't know if you started when the show launched, but maybe you came in while it was still going on. But this show was a mess. That's what I remember about it. Like
Right.
they were just constantly changing things. They were constantly moving things around rather than having some discipline and saying like, hey, we're going to stick with this group for a little bit and grow. And if you think about stuff that's been successful, like Seinfeld, watch the first year of Seinfeld, and it's not that great, but you could see what's there. You could see how it became the greatest show that it did. Same with like Friends or different things. So it's easy sometimes for people to pull the plug on things or ideas and see what's not working versus what the potential to work. So I think it's the same with people. Sometimes you could see like, this person's not good at this, they're not good at that, they blah, 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 versus, well, here's what they do well, and how can that be brought out even more?
Yeah, I think a lot of our lives, it's easy to bitch and moan and complain about stuff in that kind of same vein, but it's a lot of work sometimes to stay positive and to find the good. And that's more challenging, it seems, than it is to just be like, blah, 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 and complain and bitch and moan about stuff. I feel like what you're saying is really similar to that. I mean, a lot of people want to take the easy road. Let's just bitch about somebody and complain why they.
But that's like human nature, I think, too. It's like human nature almost to kind of do that, especially in groups. And you look at like social media, social media, the majority of it is like complaining about stuff or like, talking about why this person's terrible and why this movie sucks and why this thing should get canceled. But if you look for it, there's great stuff on there too, and lots of positive things. So it's just, someone told me once, the people that are for you are going to be for you. And the people that aren't. Like, you're going to have a really hard time. Like, you don't want to spend your whole life trying to win over the people that are kind of not for you from the jump. You wind up wasting a lot of time, if that makes much sense.
Yeah, my mom had a really good quote for me, or a little advice when I was younger. She said, don't worry about those people. Those are the ones that don't matter. When someone was being really crappy to me, she's like, those are the people that don't matter. Don't worry about it. I'm like, okay, cool. And I heard a lot of clear what she was saying.
It's tough. It's tough if that person's like your boss.
Yeah.
So, that's where people get into situations where they're like, start to hate their job and things. But
yeah. So speaking of, you went from NASCAR, and did you make that immediate jump right to the MMA, or was there something in between those two? Because man, that's I don't want to say a contrast, but man, that's a different world, and it's an awesome world to watch from the outside.
I left NASCAR to start my own production company. So
cool. Okay.
I'd been in NASCAR for like 7 years, and I was ready to leave. I was there at a really good time for NASCAR. I was never a fan of the sport per se, but it was about 4 years after Dale Earnhardt had died. And there's just been like sort of this mainstream explosion with it. It was on Fox now, and they were just doing cool projects. So I got to direct a movie about Dale Earnhardt that was in theaters. And while I was there, I was given great opportunities to work with like some really big celebrities like Tom Cruise and Kevin Costner. I directed a music video for Kevin Costner. He did like a song about NASCAR. Tom Cruise, we did a movie about Rick Hendrick and the plane crash that hit Hendrick Motorsports, and Tom Cruise narrated it. So again, there was all these really cool projects going on. And then I got to meet some of the people at ESPN. They had just started the 30 for 30 series.
Brilliant, by the way. Loved that.
Yeah. So this, like when it first started, 30 for 30 was 30 films by 30 filmmakers about like kind of controversial subjects, but also kind of the hook was that they were going to take like feature film directors and they were going to direct documentaries. Well, ESPN wanted to do a movie about this race car driver, Tim Richmond, who died of AIDS in the 1980s, isn't that well known. And like NASCAR like covered up like parts of his, it was controversial, So ESPN did not want to work with Sports League because this kind of went against everything they said 30 for 30 is supposed to be. but they kind of didn't have a choice because I had a relationship with some of his family. They knew me from another project. I had a relationship with Rick Hendricks. So we kind of had to convince them like, hey, you can trust us. We'll work with you and, tell the true story. So it was a real balancing act because obviously you're the production company for NASCAR. You don't want to make NASCAR look bad, or they don't want to look bad, but you also are trying to tell the truth. So it's kind of a high wire act. So I did that 30 for 30 and met the people at ESPN. And I think they were impressed that we got this story out, this very controversial story. And so I met them and I started thinking to myself, like, I started seeing that like kind of NASCAR had peaked in a way, and that these projects weren't necessarily going to keep going forward. And I felt like I was at a stage where I could go out on my own. So I had asked ESPN, if I went out on my own, would they give me some work? I knew some of the people there, and they said yes. They wanted to do something on the Manning family, like Peyton, Eli, Archie. And it became the film, The Book of Manning, which was one of the first projects I did when I left NASCAR. But they don't like help you get like access to people. They just said, yeah, go do it. Well, I don't know the Mannings at all, and I somehow got the phone number of Cooper Manning, who is the brother that doesn't play football, but he's still kind of known. He's in commercials and stuff. So I got him and somehow got to Archie Manning through him and kind of pitched it to him. And he said he was on board. So I told ESPN, we're a go. It's happening. And then I told NASCAR, peace, I'm out. See ya. Like I'm not here anymore. And they're like, I said it a little, gave him 2 weeks. So, and while I gave my 2 weeks notice, I get this call from Archie Manning. And he's like, hey, Cor, it's Archie. He thought my name was Corey for like the entire duration of filming. I never corrected him. And he's like, hey, Cor, I thought it over and I don't think I can do it. And I'm like, do what? And he's like, the movie. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I just quit my job, dude. And he's like, yeah, sorry, Cor. I don't know what to tell you. He's like, let's revisit in a couple of months. So I actually got in the fetal position after that call and was like, I just blew up my life. I just quit my job, said I had the Mannings. I had 2 kids, young kids. And, what am I going to do? So I called up ESPN, the guy I knew there, this guy, John Dahl, who's still an executive there, and told him, I was like, oh man, what am I going to do? Archie Manning backed out. They had already put money in my account, like wired money to me, ESPN. I had my business set up. I was like feeling myself. I'm a business. This is going to be great. And he's like, well, be patient with Archie. He said a couple of months. Don't push it. I said, well, yeah, but what am I going to do for work? And he's like, well, let me see what else we could find. So I'll always be grateful. John Dahl said, hey, we have a project about a tornado that hit the Georgia Dome during a basketball game. Would you want to do that? I was like, dude, I'll do a movie about the history of boogers. I don't care what the subject is. I need work. So sign me up. So I started working on that project. And then a few months later, Archie Manning did come around. I had emailed his wife, and then I got to work on that project. So it did work out. And there are a lot of ups and downs. It's luckily it did work out, but there were some dicey moments.
A lot of patience involved, right?
Yeah. You said MMA. So just circling all the way back.
I love this. That was awesome. I love that story. That's fantastic.
A few years later, I was doing a series. So everything leads to something else. So let me back up. I wanted to do something with Snoop Dogg, and I saw Snoop Dogg had tweeted something about the Book of Manning, and I had found out that his son played football. So I pitched ESPN about doing just like a Sports Center piece on Snoop and his son. So I got to go out there, got to get in front of Snoop. I told him I was the director of that film, and he's like, we should do the Book of Snoop Manning. I'm like, sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
he basically wanted to do a show about him and his son, and how his son was like a big time football player, which he was at the time. And his son played football. So we got that series, and it aired. We filmed it for ESPNU, and so I'm there. His son played for this high school, Bishop Gorman, in Las Vegas, which is like, I mean, nicer than most colleges. It's just a beautiful school. And on the sidelines during training camp, I saw Lorenzo Fertitta, and I recognized Lorenzo Fertitta as one of the owners of the UFC because I was a huge UFC fan. So I walked over to him and introduced myself, and I don't think he was necessarily recognized in public a lot, but I told him how much I enjoy the UFC, how much I respect it, and I was like, well, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, my son's on the team. So then I started filming his son for the show, and then we wired his son and filmed it, and I gave that wire to Mr. Fertitta, which I think he was appreciative of the footage. So then then I said to Snoop's son Cordell, I go, you should really go to a UFC event. I think that'd be really cool for the show, because I wanted to go to a UFC event and go be there. So Snoop's son Cordell went to a UFC pay-per-view with Lorenzo Fertitta's son, and we filmed it as a part of the show. Well, through that, I got to meet Dana White because I was backstage. And just because I was kind of filming Lorenzo's son, like I had like just leapfrogged a lot of levels at the UFC, because now I'm dealing with the owner of the UFC. And then I said to Dana, I was like, hey, is there any way we could interview you for this show? And he's like, sure. He was very friendly. So through that, I met them. And then Dana was like, you should do some stuff for the UFC. I'm like, I've been trying to do stuff for the UFC for the last 5 years. I'd love to do stuff. So then we started doing this show called Dana White Looking for a Fight, which started in 2015 and still on YouTube. Check it out. And it's a fun show where we travel the country and they select fighters from local shows. And while they're in the city, they do like fun activities like Anthony Bourdain. So that's how that came about.
Pretty amazing. Do you get to go to all of the events as well, or is that a total separate entity?
It depends on the project, So like, I just don't just go to UFC events. I have to be like working or tied to it, But we did a series called Fight Island Declassified, which took place during the pandemic, the summer of 2020. UFC was the first sport back during the pandemic to hold any type of events. And they did it on this place it was in Abu Dhabi. They called it Fight Island. So we were the only outside crew that went.
It's around the racetrack, right?
Yes, exactly. That's right. It's an F1 track. Yeah, that's where we stayed, in that hotel. And so it was really cool. Like, now we're used to things with COVID, but like nobody was leaving their house. Like this was like June, and let alone going on planes to other countries. And we had to get tested every day. And we were the only non-UFC employees there, my company and my crew. And we got to film the fights and the events, and there was no crowd there. So it was almost being in like a studio taping of a TV show for these pay-per-views. So that was really cool. And as a fight fan, I just got to be really close to the cage and watch. So that was pretty awesome.
So being that close to it and seeing it and experiencing it and living it for a amount of time, was that the influence that got you to want to box? Because you took out a leap, and you took a leap in starting your own company, but you've also put yourself in a different situation that you had never been in before, which is awesome to do, because as we get older, we're like, I'm not doing it. I'm good. I've done all the stuff I want to do. You actually did something that you hadn't done, and you learned from it, I'm sure. So how was that for you? What exactly did you do?
Well, I've always wanted to fight. I've always liked it. And in fact, like in high school, I was a pretty big nerd. And I'm only 5'6" now, but in like high school, I was like 5'2". So I luckily had a growth spurt my senior year. And like my senior in high school, I took boxing lessons from this kid. This kid taught at a gym. He was a year above me, and now he had graduated and he taught boxing. And he was like a cool kid, and I just liked hanging out with him, and he kind of just showed me some things. And then when I went to college, I tried to start a boxing club as like an intramural sport, but it got canceled. And then in my 20s, I tried to
Fight Club, dude. You should have just done Fight Club.
I know. Well, you know what? I liked the sport. I liked doing it, and but I just couldn't ever figure out like how to properly do it. So I was not ever good enough to like actually do it against like professionals, if that makes any sense.
Right.
And even amateur boxing are usually like 16 and 17-year-olds that'll kick your ass, like they're like
straight up,
dudes who are planning to do this for a career. So I tried in my 20s, I was supposed to do a tough man contest, and I trained in Philadelphia where I grew up. And I trained at this place called the Front Street Gym, which was actually featured in the movie Creed. It's where Creed trains with Stallone. And that was an awesome experience, but the tough man got canceled like the day before, because like these things were kind of haphazardly put together. And then I forgot about it for a while, was really bummed out. Then in my 30s, I started training again in Charlotte and was supposed to have a fight. But this gym, now when I look back, very just dicey gym, very shady. I broke my arm at the gym. I got a concussion there. And then when I got a concussion, I was like, you know what? This just must not be for me, because it just must not be meant to be. So now I'm in my 40s, another decade passes, and I'm on Fight Island, what I just told you about. And there was a lot of time to kill because you can't go out really at night and everything. So I started just hitting mitts with one of the guys that's on our show, Dean Thomas, who was a former UFC fighter, former coach. And it just dawned on me, like, wait a second, like I could get really good coaching now because I know these guys, I know UFC fighters and everything. So it started off with me, I was going to do a full MMA fight. And then I also knew, like, another thing about MMA and combat sports is like stuff just falls through a lot. Like there's a lot of like unreliability on like smaller local shows. But through this show I have with the UFC looking for a fight, these are like legit local shows that are definitely happening. So I told the promoter, hey, I'd like to fight. And he's like, 100%. So like now I knew it wasn't going to get canceled. Like I wasn't good. And I was going to get good training. I wasn't going to get concussed. So Dean reached out to another UFC fighter and said, hey, is there a guy like kind of comparable to Rory who could do a fight with him? Like somebody who's like really not that skillful, but and there was a guy who had 2 MMA fights, and he was a police officer in Chicago. And he trained with this UFC fighter, Bilal Muhammad, in Chicago. So they said, we think he'll be good. So we set it up, and man, I just went balls to the wall training. I flew out to Florida every other week and trained there at Dean's place twice a day, and just got in the best shape I could for about 2 months, and just trained my ass off. So then we did this, and it wound up going from an MMA fight to just a straight boxing match in a cage for various reasons. So so then we did that. It was in Denver, and it was actually a part of the Looking for a Fight episode. We filmed at that place, but I was like the first fight to go on. So I did the fight, and it was awesome. It was like everything I had hoped it could be, and I won, which was shocking. Won by a decision. And then I quickly showered, changed my clothes, and then produced the show like immediately afterwards, which was pretty wild. But man, I'm a really big believer that like you have to you get one life. That's what I believe. I believe like you live and you die, and when you die, like that's it. That's how I feel, that you're not and you're also not promised anything. Like I could leave this interview and just get hit by a bus, and that would be it. And that's what happens a lot. not necessarily that, but people pass away unexpectedly. So I
Right.
think you gotta like go for it while you're here, which is a cliche, like everyone says, oh, live life to your fullest. But I think you've got to be willing to be like embarrassed and somewhat humiliated if you're going to live life. So like going out and starting a company, you can fail at that. And going out and fighting, I fought in front of Dana White. I mean, and he thought I was going to get my ass kicked and told people, like he thought it was like almost like a joke that the producer of his show is going to fight. But like he didn't know what I knew. He didn't know all the work I put into it. He didn't know that like I was ready to go in there and do it. So, but still, there was that side of me that's like, maybe you could just run away and like, no one will ever know, and you won't humiliate yourself in front of Dana. So, and it's even with like, you starting your this YouTube thing, you got to be willing to put yourself out there, face rejection, and that's sometimes easier said than done for a lot of people, especially as you get older.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Sometimes that's hard. It's hard on the ego if you still have that thing intact. But if you really want to do the things that you love, you got to go do it, right?
Well, you do. Like you, for the longest time, you were a pro BMX rider, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that well, I did actually a shoot earlier with the gold medalist BMX freestyle.
Connor Fields.
Huh?
Connor Fields?
No,
BMX
it's
racer?
a woman, Charlotte Worthington. She won the Olympics. Yeah. So, and she was just so like she went and tried to do like a crazy trick in the Olympics and failed the first time. And so if she would have just went and done the course the second time without doing the trick, she probably would have medaled and still got a bronze. But she said, no, like I want to try this trick. And that to me, like she told me that, and this was before my fight, and I started telling her about my fight. And she was like, you have to be willing to fail if you're gonna win. And I thought that like she had to be willing to fall on her face again, but it was like gold or bust. She didn't just want to go through the track. And then she also said, like, it's Nike says, just do it. But like, just do it. Don't think that much about it. Just go through it. Don't overanalyze it. And she went and hit the trick, and it's insane looking. I'm sure you've seen it. So I tried to take that into my fight, don't overthink it, and, be willing to get like knocked out if you have to, but to win, which is what I wanted to try to do. So, some advice there.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a lot of winning. You're successful with the production company. You won the fight. You've consistently working with one of the most successful entities in sports right now in the MMA. I mean, Rory, you're doing it, man, which is awesome.
Well, but I've had a lot of struggles, and I think like on social media, people only see good stuff. You're like, you look at people and you're like, oh man, like that guy's got the best family and all this. But I mean, I've struggled a lot with depression in my life. A lot of things, back to my childhood. I went through a really bad divorce. And I tell you this just because I'm a human being, like everybody. And my life's been more bad times than good, but the good times are really good, so it's like you kind of just have to, my favorite movie is Rocky, and because that's having that attitude, it's not about this is corny, but it's not about how many times you get knocked down, it's about how many times you get back up. And that's BMX, right? I mean, how many times do you fall biking? I mean, that's just a given that you're going to fall. You fall more than you hit great tricks, I would imagine.
For sure.
So, yeah, I've had a lot of disappointment. And I don't want to seem like it's just been all great. A lot of disappointment with projects, too. A lot of things with work, taking it all the way and then it falls apart. And so it's just, you got to be willing to be persistent and just not lose that like hope, Another favorite movie, Shawshank Redemption, and he says hope, is a really good thing. It's the best of things, and I think like you gotta try to hold on to that. So if like you're going through a rough time or you're feeling really bad, feelings are temporary. Good ones, bad ones. Feelings aren't permanent, and just if you're good times can turn around, and if you're alive, and there's hope, that good things can happen.
Dude, I love it. That's fantastic. What a wonderful way to go through life and keep it on the positive side. What do you got going next? Before I let you get out of here, what's next for you?
Well, I directed my first scripted movie last summer.
Wow.
So that's kind of been like my main focus. I've been doing like other work to pay bills and everything, but we filmed last summer in North Carolina. I'm really excited about it. It's a thriller, like an independent film. It stars Rob Lowe's son, John Owen Lowe, Jim Parrick from True Blood, Andrew McCarthy, who was in the Brat Pack. A lot of good actors are in it. And so we filmed that. It was in post. And this is a good example that ties things together. So we made a cut of the movie that I was really excited about. Like, I thought, like, man, I think this is really good. And everything looked beautiful. Like, it's shot really well. The acting's really good. So I sent a copy to Rob Lowe, and like he just eviscerated it. Like he like took the equivalent of like putting his hand through my chest and ripping out my heart. Like I was just crushed. And he doesn't mince words. Like he's not like gently letting you down. Like he just is brutally honest. This part's terrible. This sucks. This you need this and that. So I was pretty upset, but it's another example of like, if you want to do it, you got to kind of push past that thing. So, maybe at that point, the movie's pretty good or decent, but like he's saying, well, do you want it to be great? And this is what you have to do. So, and that happens with all kinds of movies. So that's what we're dealing with right now. We've been already editing it for 6 months. We're still doing a re-edit now of that cut, but man, it was one of the best experiences of my entire life, not just work, was filming that movie. So just because we had so much fun filming it, and I love working with actors. I love it. To me, they're like musicians. They can do something that is such a rare talent when it's done well, like there's a lot of bad acting, but if you have some good actors, like it's like, you can't even kind of describe why it's good, but it's just so different and unique, almost like music, like a song.
Like when you know it, right? Can't put
something like that, and
good.
Well, they take what's on the page and like elevate it, make it better. So I love doing that, and we had a lot of fun, and I formed like real friendships and relationships. And that's advice I give to people is like, make your work personal. I never like the saying, it's just business, not personal. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's like that at corporations in different places. But for me, I think everything is relationship based. And I like being friends with people I work with. Maybe it's just work friends, but there's still a genuine relationship there. So I did that with the movie. We got along great. It was a great experience. A lot of pressure, a lot of hard work, but like the real like fulfilling kind, So did that in my fight and got married all last year.
Amazing. What a killer year.
It was a good year. I have nowhere to go but down at this point.
Well, Rory, it has been so great catching up with you. I appreciate your time, and I love following you through social media channels. So don't delete those, because that's how I stay in touch with you. But thank you for your time today. It's been fantastic catching up.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, if you guys like what you're seeing, please make sure that you subscribe right here on YouTube. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, subscribe there as well. Thanks for tuning in. You guys have a great day. We'll see you soon.